Hi, welcome to Girlfriends of a Certain Age, a podcast for women in midlife. We are busy living our best lives. I'm your co host, Flesche Hesh. I'm a business coach and work life balance expert for women.
And I'm your co host, Jessica Neighbor. I'm a voice coach for vocalists and public speakers online at Impact Vocal Coaching. We are girlfriends in real life, and in every episode, we'll discuss a different hot topic about becoming wise women, recovering from being a good girl, and not giving a bleep anymore.
If you identify as a girlfriend of any age and you want to join our conversation, join us on Instagram, YouTube, and girlfriendsofacertainage.com.
Hello, girlfriends of a certain age. We are so excited to talk with you today. I am your co host, Jessica.
And I'm your co host, Flesche.
Hey! Today we are going to talk about an oh so emotional topic, apologizing, apologies. And we are going to break down together the difference between apologizing as our good girls think we should and apologizing as grown ass women in middle age. And even deciding, do we really need to apologize or not? And if we do, how do we give a genuine apology? And I'm so excited because Flesche has, as usual, a fabulous step program for us to use and utilize to really make our apologies sincere. But again, do we actually need to apologize or not? Yeah. So Flesche, this is just so wonderful for us to talk about.
It is. I can't
Um,
wait.
I can't wait.
And today we are celebrating something, Jessica. Do you want to tell the folks what we're celebrating?
Oh my gosh, what are we celebrating? Uh, oh, this is our 11th episode. Woo!
Oh my word. It feels so grown up. So I don't know. I feel like we've done this relatively quickly. The feedback we're getting is incredible on our podcast to have 11 episodes live. And
Yes.
you and I are just getting started. I feel like we have so many great ideas. We're getting so much feedback from the community of women. And I just can't wait to see what's coming next. It's wonderful. And I want to thank every listener, every viewer on YouTube for showing up and voting, with your likes and with your clicks, how much you're enjoying these topics with us and our girlfriend chats.
Oh my gosh, it is so delightful to be with you. We can't thank you enough for supporting us, listening, giving us your feedback. That fuels us. And if you want to help us out in any way to keep this party going, just make sure that you like and share and subscribe, all the things that really do give us a boost because we're already planning out season 2, y'all. And we want you to be involved. We want you to be one of our girlfriends. So I'm super stoked that we've done this. Woo! To us,
Yeah.
being grown up women.
Being grown-up women and highlighting other grown-up women, that women in midlife, I think oftentimes, like with marketing, we're overlooked, and we
Mhm.
are a force to be reckoned with, and we will be seen, we will be heard, and we will be spilling the tea on all the things
Oh,
that fly
yes.
into our brains to share, and in this girlfriend chat way that we do this. So there's so much more. Buckle up, y'all.
You! I love it. All right. Well, why don't we launch in a little bit to today's topic? So, you brought up this topic. I know that when we were talking in another Good Girl episode, the idea of apologizing came up. And I remember at the end, you said, oh, we really need to tackle that. That needs its own full episode, if not a whole series. So I'm so excited to hear, how you want to frame this for our listeners today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, you and I call ourselves good girls in recovery. This idea that when we were very young, so many of us learned these strategies of keeping our head down and our mouth shut and our eyes averted. If we did say anything, it was just, I'm sorry. And that sorry for those little girls in us often meant, I'm sorry for being here. I'm sorry for taking up room. I'm sorry that you have to spend money on me. I'm sorry that I'm hungry and whatever the thing is, I'm
Yeah,
waking you up too early. It was almost like an apology for existing.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have this weird memory. This is going to sound really strange, but it's true. I was so shy about existing and taking up space that I don't know if you did this as a younger girl, but when I went into the bathroom stall, I was really embarrassed if anyone heard me pee.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally.
Do you remember doing that? Do you know what I would do? I would either cough or I would flush the toilet. And while the toilet was flushing, I would go pee. Talk
Uh huh.
about trying not to exist. We're apologizing for bodily fluids? Come
Uh huh.
on.
Uh-huh. It's so toxic, it's so pervasive, and I don't know that anyone explicitly ever taught us that. I do know that nobody ever explicitly taught me how to apologize well, when to do it, how to do it, why to do it, when to do it, a step-by-step process. I think a lot of the modeling I saw was just either the quick, "Sorry," like I banged my shopping cart into you,
Mhm.
but really no depth to bringing a healing in between people. I remember as a child being forced to apologize by teachers, other people's parents forcing me to apologize or forcing their kids to apologize to me. And it was
Yeah.
always just this lame, sorry. Never, never anything real or authentic. And,
Mhm.
you and I are American, and there's a very uniquely American perspective too about apologies. And
Mhm.
that is that winners don't apologize and
Right.
losers do.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that is the main thing that seeped into my young brain and told me when to apologize. And because I'm just apologizing for existing, I'm going to apologize for everything else too.
Absolutely. And that whole winner takes all, winners versus losers, it's like to apologize means you show your weakness.
Yes.
And you think about beautiful cultures or just what a beautiful way to be if we actually can show our humility. That we can show being humble, that we can show being thoughtful. But we've seen, and I think it's gotten worse. I think we've gotten more polarized, and how no one wants to say sorry. Everyone wants to cancel each other out, not give anyone a break. And I think we're in a very dangerous time and era that's very charged with no one seems very willing to apologize for jack these days.
It's true. It's true. And so it is getting worse. And so I do want to highlight that apologizing is hard. I'm not
Mm,
here to say, oh, if you're not doing it right, shame on you. You're not going to hear any of that from me. What I want to acknowledge is that it is hard to apologize, to say, I did wrong. I did wrong. I did you wrong, right? Or I didn't do the good and right thing. And I need to clean that up.
mm,
So that is not an easy thing to do, especially because it can trigger our guilt. It can trigger
mhm.
feelings of shame. It can trigger feelings of low self esteem if that's something that we struggle with. It is something very serious. And that's why we wanted to devote this time to it. I also want to highlight the fact that it is almost impossible to get a genuine apology from a narcissistic or toxic person. So
Mm.
that's another thing we need to be weighing. And this is something you and I have touched on a lot in many of our episodes. And I think it also deserves its own episode. Um, but it's also a great red flag for you. If there's someone who absolutely will not apologize to you, that's a
Yeah.
pretty good red flag. Toxic person, possibly narcissistic person who absolutely has no ability to look within and take responsibility for their thoughts, for their deeds, for their actions, for their words. So I think that's very
Yeah.
important. We're often looking to get blood from a stone, and
Right.
you can't get it.
And those very insincere apologizes that narcissists, in my experience, are so great at laying out. So it's like
Ugh,
when the light's on you, they apologize profusely, but then
yes,
the next day they're back to their old tricks. So I call that the
exactly.
crocodile tears, and that's
Yes.
something to be aware of. But this is great too, because if as we go through this step by step process, we're going to look at what it really means to have a sincere apology, either on, the giving end or the receiving end, so that we can be aware of those false folks out there.
Today's episode is brought to you by the 5 Minute Work Life Balance Digital Workbook. Do you need help achieving work life balance? I will teach you how to take back your time and your life you can forget about feeling guilty, overwhelmed, and out of balance. You will discover the 9 unexpected strategies to achieve work life balance. My name is Flesche Hesh, trained as a marriage and family therapist turned business coach and a work life balance expert for women of a certain age. I'm the mom of two. I'm a CEO, published author, and a podcaster. So today you can get access to the digital workbook, my online course, and me, your coach, for $29. This is available for a limited time, and the link is below. Exactly, exactly. So, Jessica, can we call on some of your acting skills to help us understand what a bad apology looks and sounds like?
Oh, yes, my pleasure. All right, up first, we have the classic one. Sorry, geez, you are so sensitive.
Oh,
Mmm. Yeah, way to put the blame right back on the person. Way to make them feel
exactly.
like shit. Thank you
That's
so much. Or another classic. I'm sorry, but it wasn't that bad.
gaslighting. Hmm.
Seriously, way to diminish your problem. Here's another great one. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I was just joking.
Oh,
Mm,
hmm, yeah. I mean, actually, all three of these are pretty classic gaslighting. And gaslighting just means trying to make you seem like the crazy one, like
mm,
you are completely invalid. Your thoughts, your feelings have no meaning, no purpose, and are going to be completely stepped over.
totally. You can't take a joke. You're too sensitive. All of that messaging is all back on you. Absolutely.
Exactly. Hmm.
Ooh, and here's one. I'm sorry that happened, but it wasn't my fault.
Mm. The word but has no place in an apology. If someone's doing that to you, they are weaseling out of their responsibility.
Yes, right.
Hmm.
Indeed, indeed. All right, and the last but not least, blank stare if you can't see me. I'm sorry. Or even more, I'm sorry. So this is what we
Yeah,
say, right? Like if it's there's just like no feeling behind it at all, like we could care less, or even a very passive aggressive opposite of I'm sorry when we're saying it.
exactly. Exactly. Ah, all of these are so maddening. And oftentimes the person who will say all these things often will say all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just like, I apologized. What more do you want? I did it. I did the thing.
Yeah.
And I think that also brings up the idea that an apology is not a one-time thing. I guess it depends on what you do. Like if it is like bumping your shopping cart into someone, you could say, excuse me, or I'm sorry. But if you really hurt somebody's feelings, you might need to bring up this topic more than once. And
Mhm.
I think oftentimes the person who did wrong, who did you wrong, even if it's you or if it's me,
Yeah.
we might need to discuss it more than once. The
Yes.
person just doing the apology or some lame ass apology like one of these bad apologies thinks that's it, and they dust off their hands and they move
Yep.
on, and that you're
Yep.
supposed to bounce right back like a rubber band and go back to being the way things were instead of really putting in the work. And that's what this episode is about. How do we put in the work? How do we heal our relationships? And it really starts with our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we also have these questions to ask ourselves if we feel like we need to give a sincere apology. Because again, like you're saying, a lot of us think, we say it once, it's one and done. Even for those of us who I think are very caring people, feeling bad is just naturally a state we don't want to be in. We want to move through it and get over it as quickly as possible. Feeling guilty sucks even more. So to sit with that discomfort, to sit with all of that, and be okay, and know that you are going to be okay. This isn't all or nothing, for you if you're the person who did wrong, and that you can absolutely mend things. So I love that this next step we're going to go through to ask ourselves these 7 questions before we even go to apologize.
Exactly. I also just want to tell our listener that you don't need to write all these down. If you want to get a
Mm,
copy of all these questions that we're asking, you can find the link for that down in the liner notes, and we'll just send it to you straight away. So you'll have it
mm.
as well. It'll be your own cheat sheet for the next time you find yourself needing to make an apology.
Oh my gosh, I seriously need a copy for sure, for sure. All right, so we're going to share when to apologize and to ask yourself these 7 questions before you do. So, what did I do wrong? All right, and I think
Hmm.
that's so helpful because that's going to help us really determine whether this is a good girl, leftover knee jerk reaction, or if this is really a genuine, grown up, mature awareness that, ooh, oh, that really was wrong. That really did cross a line. So that's
And
number one.
this is also
Mm-hmm.
especially important if you're getting pressured to apologize. Whether
Mm,
the person who is telling you they've been offended, you owe me an apology. We will not speak about anything until I get that. And
mm.
in moments like that, you need tools where you can decide, well, wait a minute, right? The knee jerk reaction, my inner 7-year-old wants to say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Make this go away. Don't be mad at me. Don't hate me. Wah. But the big girl needs to be able to say, wait a minute, let me go and think, and I'll get back to you about whether or not I owe you an apology. And that's what these questions are also helping to elicit.
Love it. Love it. Number two is to say, how do I know I was in the wrong?
Mm,
Right? What are the ways that you can replay the situation or replay the conversation to sense, ooh, what was that moment? What was that thing that was hurtful? It might be obvious or it might take some reflection. And I think it's just important to, cool heads prevail. Take a moment, stop, and look at these things. If I could go back in time, would I say it again? Ooh, yeah.
right.
Recount your steps, recount play by play, think it through. Who did I hurt with my words? Think about what you said. How could it be interpreted? And really think for a moment about what was said. How do I know I hurt them? Ah, this is so key. Are you imagining the hurt or did the person tell you? Oh, to me, that one is a huge one from the recovered good girl because I think so much in our younger lives, I think we would spend time obsessing afterwards, worrying, ooh, did I step on anyone's toes? Did I hurt anyone's feelings? You know,
Exactly.
yeah, that's so, so important. Then we have number 6. Will I have been hurt if I hadn't said anything? That's a really good point. Are you internally upset with something that you did? Did it cross a line for how you want to behave in the world?
Right.
And number 7, will I be angry at myself if I apologize?
This one's so
Oh,
big. This one's huge. This one's huge and big, big girls. That recovering good girls. This is something that it's like a muscle we need to build in ourselves, right? And sometimes that knee jerk reaction to apologize, like I did not owe that person an apology. Why was
yeah,
I the one willing to contort myself into the shape of a pretzel to make them happy
absolutely.
and sell myself out?
I remember for some reason, whatever it is, I would sometimes get cornered as a younger woman by men. Maybe this is not for some reason. We're getting mansplained to, right? And you're getting this like monologue from someone. And it was like, how do I cut them off? Or I really have to go. I literally have to be somewhere else. And I felt like I had to apologize to just, to keep track of my time. And I remember vividly later on going, why did I just apologize to that person who just was going off on some like random, vanity speech
Oh yeah.
and just expected me to listen to it all? So I'm
It's
definitely going
happened
to
to
leave
me
that
so many times as well. And I
one.
imagine our listeners are like nodding their heads right now. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, I've done that. And you know what? It takes little chunks of us, or we're giving little chunks of ourselves to the other person
Yeah,
just to make it go away.
Yeah.
And an apology often can do that. Those are like, fine, I got my apology. They admitted they were wrong, and they walk away with some little chunk of you. You're like, they didn't really deserve that, but okay.
I'm remembering that happened recently to my younger son. He was walking our dog in our local park, and there's, lovely people in the park, but someone stopped and was asking him about the dog, and then kind of continued to have a long conversation with my 12-year-old son. And he said that he felt like he wanted to be respectful, but at some point he also really wanted to continue on going. And he came home and he said, Mom, I felt rude because I wanted to keep walking. And it really felt great for me to be able to say, you are not responsible to stand there and listen to some stranger talk to you for too long. You can be polite, and then you can politely say, oh, I have to be on my way. I have to be going. So I think a lot of younger people feel, there's so many different social dynamics, right? The older, the younger, all of it. But that just happened, literally.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, you're reminding me when I was getting ready to put some of these thoughts together. My child was dealing with a situation where someone and at his school was demanding an apology from him, and he said, "Mom, I'm just trying to figure out if I really owe the apology." And I was like,
Uh-huh.
well, Mommy has 7 questions we can ask,
Here we
but
go.
I am modeling this for my children, just as you are. Something my husband and I will both apologize to our children if we did something that was hurtful or wasn't kind or gentle or as respectful as we would like it to be. And my kids, they'll bring that up sometimes. Do you remember that time when dad apologized? Do you remember that time when you said you were sorry? and
Hmm.
and it's amazing to them because I think most children do not see adults who apologize to them, let
Right.
alone to other adults, right?
Right.
So it's so important that we're modeling this for the younger people in our lives, but also reinforcing it for ourselves and of course our own inner child as well too.
Totally. On the flip side, I will say I do sometimes see mothers feeling guilty towards their children and over apologizing.
Oh yeah.
So in my household, I have had my husband once or twice intervene and go, Just don't apologize. Don't apologize
Mm.
for that situation. And I think that good girl, good mother pressure is there. So it's I absolutely agree with you though that showing, that adults make mistakes, parents make mistakes, to be human is to err. That is such a wonderful thing to teach our kids.
Oh yeah.
But boy, that good mother can start to over apologize, and that doesn't help us either. That doesn't help our children.
It doesn't. So it's so great to have, right, to be able to be self-reflective about
Yeah.
that. You've got your husband who can help check you. I've got my partner who can help check me, and we can check each other. And I think there's another part of it too, to have other people who you can be vulnerable with and say, "Did I do wrong? Was I in
Yes.
the wrong there?" And so that really brings us back to these 7 questions, because if you're still not sure after asking these 7 questions, you need a third party to
Yeah.
help you. It might be a dear friend or a spouse or a relative who you really can rely on, or it could be a paid professional. It could be a healer, a therapist, a coach that you're working with as well, to find out what's really going on for you. Again, holding up that mirror to yourself. Um, and if you've decided that you don't owe an apology,
Hmm.
this will take another level of strength, which is to not apologize. You don't do it, right?
Hmm.
And if someone is pressuring you and you've decided you don't owe that apology, a really simple script is just, I can't. Okay. So now that you're clear that whether you do or you don't owe the apology, if you do, I want to give you 7 steps to help support you in this process. You can hold on to yourself and hold on to your dignity and do the good and right thing and apologize at whatever level is appropriate. So, of course, there's a hierarchy of offenses, right? Something very small to the most egregious, emotional or physical crimes that we could commit. And
Hmm.
so we really have to figure out where we are on the scale. You don't need all 7 steps for every single thing, but depending on the person that you're dealing with, how much you want to invest in that relationship, these 7 steps are here to support you. So you'll take the ones that work for you and leave the rest. So, step number 1 in the apology is to start with a very heartfelt and genuine, I'm sorry. Now, you do let that linger for a moment, not like the bad apology we had up at the top, where we're just like, I'm sorry. No, but you start with, I'm sorry. So you let them know you are setting the tone and you are going to be gracious and really give this the time and the attention that it deserves. And
Mm,
then step two is to take responsibility for what you said, what you did, right? And to just own it. I did say that. I did say it. You're right.
yeah.
And if you step three is to acknowledge the pain that you caused in the other person. You may or may not know that yet, what that is. So if you don't know, you could ask.
Hmm.
Would you tell me how that made you feel when I called you a mean name or I crashed your car and refused to pay for it? Would you tell me how that made you feel? If you do know, then you say it. I know that when I crashed your car and then initially refused to pay for it, that you were
Hmm.
scared that you would be
Hmm.
stuck paying for it. And
Hmm.
that was never my intention. I was freaking out too. Or you can start to get into the story of what the thing is that happened, right?
Right.
Step four is to take steps to make amends. And this is where I see people screw up all the time because they think the offending person making the apology often makes an assumption of what I think you need for the amends. Oh, well, I'll
Mm.
just pay you back for it, or I'll scrub the floors on my hands and knees for a week to make up for it. When we need to ask the person that we hurt and that we offended, what will it take for me to make things right with you?
That's such a gift to give them because then they get to feel a sense of justice because it might
Exactly.
be totally different, than what you imagine, you know?
Exactly.
This might be enough or they they might have a whole plan in place.
Well, and you need to probably write this down. So, okay, Jessica needs me to do X, Y, and Z to make amends. I better write that down. I better
Mm,
figure out the time frame she needs those things to happen. That I need to get those things done for. How am I going to prove it to her? And
mhm.
and how long is it going to take? And I need to follow up with it. I need to follow through
Yeah,
because that's the other part of the apology, right? Initially, these are all words,
right.
right? But there's an expression that I learned from a wonderful healer that I know. And she told me the truest apology is changed behavior.
Mm,
The truest apology is changed behavior so that we
yes.
don't have to have this conversation again. Because I
Huge.
know how I stepped on your toes. So I'm not going to do that again because I love you and I respect you and I am an active participant in our relationship and I want to
Yeah.
heal. I want to create a healing. That's really what an apology is. It's the start of a healing process. It's not the whole thing. It's just the
And it's
start of it.
it's healing and it's also allowing us to evolve. So the very thing that we're so fearful of doing is going to allow our relationship and how we interact with people to evolve and make progress. And I think when we see this in couples, in long-term friendships, those moments when we are able to reconcile and move through some of these steps bring us closer together. So we just have to remember
Absolutely.
that that's the biggest gift of all that we're getting out of this is that we're learning how to become better humans.
Exactly. Exactly. I have this belief that when things go wrong, the potential for things to be better than ever lies within the problem.
Yeah.
Because if people handle it well, right? If everyone takes responsibility for their part in it
Yeah.
and moves toward each other, ding, 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 that is just an incredible thing and a very rare thing we see in the culture now. Very rare.
Absolutely. Right. Well, we have this fantasy that we should always get along with everyone, especially going back to the good girl, and that we should please everyone and everyone should please us. And that's like total BS.
It's
So
total BS.
it's total BS.
And then
Mm,
step five is to recommit to the relationship,
mm,
right? Your friendship, our siblinghood, our marriage, our working relationship means the world to me.
yeah.
And I am recommitting to being a better partner, a better colleague, a better sister, a better friend. That is my commitment to you today. So that's another part of this apology. Again, depending on how much you've done wrong,
Yeah.
what you might need to say to clean things up with this person. Then step 6 is to ask for forgiveness.
Mm.
Ask for forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is something that the other person may or may not be able to give you in the moment. And this is where I see a lot of apologies break down. Well, I asked for forgiveness and she said no. Or she said,
Mhm.
not right now, or I don't know. And then the person giving the apology feels rejected.
Right.
But it's very important that you are committed to a healing, this being a healing practice that
Yeah.
you are putting forth in your own life and doing it in real time, right?
Right.
Just because you're giving the apology, the other person may not behave quite the way you expected,
Right. We can't have those expectations. We can't
right?
expect, well, I did A, so you should be doing B right now. Like, we're putting it
Right.
out there and then they're going to process it however they process it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the idea that forgiveness is not a set thing that happens. Forgiveness is a process, another healing process
Yeah.
that could take years depending on what happened. And then step 7 is to promise to never do it again. Because
Mm.
again, the truest apology is changed behavior. So this is something that you now need to live into. You now need to be in this healing process. Remember that you stepped on someone's toes and what you committed to make right with them.
Mhm.
I also feel the need to remind my recovering good girls who are listening to this that if you are in a dynamic with someone who is apologizing to you all the time for
Mm.
the same thing, that's another red flag. If your
Yes.
partner keeps promising to stop drinking and embarrassing you at family parties, but keeps doing it, like that's not, they're not apologizing, right? They're just trying to buy more cover. They're trying to get you not to be mad at them or to put
Right.
your foot down and demand that they actually make the interior changes that need to shift for them to stop drinking and being a problem in your life, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you'll hear that in, relationships that are really not healthy, that someone, vacillates between being even abusive and then being overly apologetic and, kind of love bombing the person. And it
Yeah.
goes back and forth and it can get into this really funky cycle. So it's a good point that if it's this like reoccurring apology, but it's empty, and as you said, the habit, the action hasn't changed, and you feel like you're just stuck in some horrible rerun, then that is a rerun to try to get out of if you can, and to go and seek support for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that is a very toxic dynamic, very, very dangerous to enable someone else to hurt you repeatedly. That's a
Yes.
very, very bad scene. So the last thing, and I don't call it a step, but for me, it's a more of a state of mind, which is to really actively listen to the other person while you are making your apology. And so this is also hard because if you did wrong, it is, and you are a normal, healthy person with empathy, it is going to feel bad to know that you made feel someone feel terrible, whether it's physical or emotional or financial or whatever you did. It is a terrible feeling to do
Yeah.
wrong. And so it will be hard. It will be ouchy to hear the other person. It really will. And they may or may not be ready for the apology at all. So just to remind you that really it comes down to your commitment to the other person. How
Hmm.
hard are you willing to work to make things right with them? And not selling yourself out. So that's where
Hmm.
the good girl needs to really hold. I keep clutching my chest and my heart because that I can feel it so strongly, even in myself as a recovering good girl myself. Um, that when I've hurt somebody and I really want to make it right, it does hurt. It is painful. It's also a beautiful feeling when you work through it.
Yes,
It's
it is.
incredible to know that you had the superpower to dig deep and apologize for doing wrong. And the
Yeah.
other person loved you enough to hear you struggle. You might even need to bring these notes with you. I wrote down some notes to do a proper apology. I think
Yeah.
I think most people would actually be very touched. Wow, you're taking this seriously, right?
Absolutely.
Because an apology in person is obviously the most impactful. Over the
Hmm.
phone, maybe is next. Over email or a letter, is getting lower on the list of acceptable, warm, fuzzy, really trust building activities. But those are also available to you depending
And
on
text,
where you're at.
text, don't bother. Texting apologies just seems
Just
like
don't even bother.
a,
Yeah.
a total cop out.
You're going to get blocked. That person's just going to block you and be like,
Here's
whatever.
a sorry meme with a sad face.
Blocked. So the other side of this is how to receive an apology, right? So
Mm,
the first one is the most ouchy, possibly, but it's also ouchy to be on the receiving end when someone needs to give you an apology and they're ready to do it. How can we be gracious, stay true to ourselves, be the mature woman and not the busted, sad, apologizing for breathing, little child that many of us once were.
yeah.
But there are simple scripts that I want to give you that just help you in this process. And the first one would be to simply say, thank you,
Mm,
right? Thank you for apologizing. I
hmm.
appreciate that. I appreciate that first step because, again,
Exactly.
I think it is important as the receiver to indicate, depending on, again, on what somebody did, that this may need to be more of a conversation. The
Yes.
second thing you could say, another possibility is, your apology helps me. I
Hmm.
know I've said this one, and the person who was apologizing was like, oh, it helped you. Wow. You could tell they were sweating buckets because they had to apologize. And then I said, thank you. Your apology helps me. And it
Hmm.
really turned things around. That was really
Hmm.
powerful. Another one is, I accept your apology and I don't want to do this with you anymore.
Hmm.
Right. So we can
Hmm.
receive it and say thank you and close that out. And if there's something more we need to say, of like, get out of my life, that might be part of it too. I know I've done this with someone before and I never heard from them again. And it was
Yeah.
so beautiful. And I did accept the apology.
Yeah.
It was like tiny fraction of what they needed to say. And I realized, again, I can't get blood from a stone. This was a true narcissist. And I was like, and I had already decided that that friendship was over. And so when she came limping back, months later with some lame ass apology, I was like, I know that was really hard for her. Of course, she apologized over email. And I was like, yeah, thank you. Got it.
Right.
I accept your apology and don't write to me again.
Woo! That is some mature woman stance you took. I'm impressed. I
Well, and
think
I
that really
also had
takes
been,
guts.
it did take guts, and I had been putting up with a lot for a long time. And so I
Yeah.
think by the time I realized, and then she had given me this gift of silence, I realized, oh yeah, that relationship was super toxic.
Yeah.
And people like that always come back. They always, they always come back and have something to say. And so when that happened, it felt really good to receive it,
Yeah.
right? And to just put the period on the end of that chapter and close that book. And
Yeah.
I got so energized. I realized I was taking my energy back from the dynamic. It was really powerful for me personally. So I wanted to throw that in here in case
Yeah.
that helps someone else in a similar situation.
The one thing I want to add into that too is that there'll be situations, it reminds me of my kids again. They'll apologize for, having attitude or doing something or resisting something. And I'll notice that they want often to apologize and immediately move on and wrap it
Yes.
up. So
Yeah.
I want to train them that saying I'm sorry is a great first step. But sometimes I might say, I appreciate your apology. I'd like us to talk about this. Or if I'm still really fuming and upset, I'd say, I appreciate your apology. And when I'm calmed down, I'd like to talk more about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's
Absolutely.
the timing too. I think, apologies. There's some finesse in reading the room. Is this the right time? Is this person still fuming and steam's coming out of the top of their head? And, thinking of when to do it. But I think if you're accepting an apology, but you still feel really upset, giving yourself that space and letting them know that you want that space is totally reasonable and good training for the person. Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that phrase, this is a great first step. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is a wonderful first step. I really appreciate your
They're like, wait, how
apology.
many
Wait,
steps? How many
oh.
steps are we talking about? First step. Oh, okay.
Wait, there's more. I have to do this again.
When you said
Yeah.
steps, what did you do? Yeah,
Exactly. Right. We are because we teach people how to treat us,
that's
right?
right.
And we might need to go back and say, well, we need to redo. You want to be Jessica's friend? Let's get back into boot camp. You don't talk to me that way. You don't
Mhm.
do this to me. And we talk about our feelings. That's what
Right.
it takes to be in relationship with me.
Yeah.
Welcome back. You can ride the ride again. So I think it's very important that we let people know that, especially if we need that time, and we need to keep processing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ask yourself, does this feel authentic? And ask yourself, like from your gut. Don't use your head. Your head probably won't be very helpful to you, but use your gut. Like, what is my first reaction to this? No, this doesn't ring true. I think this
Hmm.
person is just trying to get on to the next step, but not, this doesn't feel like a real apology.
Yeah.
What you do with that is really up to you. You could say to the person, this doesn't feel authentic, or you might need more time to think about it too. So there it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. Depending on their response and
Right.
how you are receiving it, will determine the next step that is taken or not taken.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, another thing to think about in the receiving of an apology is this person a repeat offender? We already touched on this, so I won't talk more about it. Ask yourself, was this a complete apology?
Mm.
Now, most people in your life will not have listened to this podcast, which was intended for you. So you can't hold them to that standard. Well, you didn't do all 7 steps that Flesche and Jessica talked about. They're not going to know. And again,
Right.
most people don't know how to apologize properly, but they can do the best with the skills they got. And
Hmm.
in most cases, you're going to know what that is,
Right.
you know?
Absolutely.
So you
Yes.
just have to ask yourself if it feels authentic, if it feels like a true thing. Is this what, and honestly, too, is like, was it worth your time and energy,
Hmm.
right? You have to assess all of this, and you kind of filter all that through your own gut, or
Mm.
ask a trusted friend
Hmm.
to help you
Hmm.
process it. And what else do you need to say to feel complete? Again, when someone is coming to you hat in hand to apologize, it's not the best time probably to unleash and relive all the nastiness that played out. That's a
Hmm.
later conversation, unless they have the capacity for it, and some people do. Um, and then if the apology does feel authentic, do you then have what it takes to move forward with that person?
Yeah.
Do you want to move forward with them?
Right, because it's gonna require a little compromise that this person hurt you, that now they're making amends, depending on, again, the level of hurt, and that you feel like there's enough there that you value that relationship to move forward, that opens you up to maybe feeling a little vulnerable. Could I get hurt again? But that is kind of a risk I think we take, and being okay with that. And then, like you're saying,
Absolutely.
kind of like continually checking in. Also, the restorative justice circles that they have now, I think when it's a real egregious crime or thing that happened, are very, very helpful, because then you have a mediator there, and that can be a huge thing, that goes into that. Is there anything you wanted to add to the restorative justice model?
Yeah, well, for those who don't know what that is, it's something that comes out of our criminal justice system here in America. This idea that true healing and forgiveness actually is possible, like in murder cases. Oftentimes the offending person who murdered somebody, their family working with the murderer, who is probably going to spend most of their lives in prison, but working out, finding a way to get to a place of forgiveness, of neutrality, of working through all the harshness and the intensity and all the feelings. I think it's also something that, in the more egregious things that happen between partners, or whether you cheated on your spouse or they cheat on you, your best friend stabs you in the back by doing this, that, or the other. These really intense, just like life can't hardly go on after someone does this.
Mm-hmm.
um, that restorative justice is a really beautiful way when everyone is committed to a
Mm-hmm.
process like that. And It's incredible. I mean, you could just read books and blogs about it, and learn about what this process is, and determine if your situation is intense enough for
Hmm.
something like that. But I love that even within the criminal justice system, we have this process toward healing, toward
Hmm.
really moving through what happened, all the feelings, everyone getting to say all the things that need to say, in these situations. It's really powerful and really beautiful.
Yeah, you hear too from both parties, the person, the offender and the victim, that it brings healing to everybody. And I know sometimes that seems like why would anyone ever forgive, some of the worst acts? But, you're holding on to the trauma and the bitterness, and there's a release. There's a real release when you forgive someone. And I've never had that scale, but I know there have been certain instances where I'd be really upset about something and someone did really give me a genuine apology, and you can feel this relief come over your body. You've been
Yeah.
holding something that
Yes.
does not serve you well. So again, I think we have to grapple with our culture at large and how it shows us that, even to accept an apology is a weak act, but it can
Yes.
actually be the bravest thing you can ever do, and it can be a huge relief for your healing process as well as a victim.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, um, there will be plenty of women listening to us chat about this and saying, yeah, the person who hurt me doesn't even have the capacity or, the emotional intelligence to ever apologize to me. I'll never get
Right.
that with them. And depending on how that's holding your life back or helping you to go forward,
Yeah.
um, because in my life, all the experiences that I've had, when I work through something, even if it's like letting someone go, I feel like gifts come into my life. It's like, oh, that was holding my energy. Wow,
Yeah.
my life went forward after
Yeah.
I got rid of so and so, or I
Uh-huh.
apologized to that person. I was able to let go of my guilt and shame about that, and I moved forward. And wow, gifts came my way. So I think we also underestimate how what it can unlock, but when you don't have someone well enough to apologize to you, to do that, that may be a situation. If you can't move forward, I would strongly encourage you to get support,
Mm-hmm.
and for that, so that you can let it go, because
Mm-hmm.
that's really what it's about. That's
Yeah.
really ultimately what forgiveness is. It's you letting go of the thing that happened to you and getting neutral,
Yeah.
feeling that sense of neutrality around it.
All right. I love it. So, what you want to finally look at is number one, who owes you an apology? Number two, who do you owe an apology to? Why haven't you done it? Number three, who never apologizes for their bad behavior? I know we all can relate to that. Who is like the repeat offender of being late or flaking out? Come on, we all have those people. It's really important to ask that question. Number four, an apology will alleviate guilt only when it is deserved. Ooh, good girls. Good girls. Always pause before apologizing. That is so true. Number five, toxic people rarely take responsibility for their actions because they can't be self reflective enough to admit they are wrong. Yes, their little fragile egos will just collapse in on themselves. They're like a black hole that will just disintegrate. So just remember that. And six, severe transgressions may need more of a restorative justice approach, as we talked about before, and moderated by a specialist. Mm, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. And we have a question to ask you all, listeners that are listening to us on this very, very intense topic today, which is, what is the best apology you've ever received?
Oh, I love
And
that.
how did that land for you and why? Yeah, it's a great, great question.
Yeah. If you're listening to this in Spotify, there's a question at the very bottom of this episode. You can actually type it in there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave it for us in the comments. And we are so excited to hear your side of it. What is the best apology you ever received? And I want, that's it's good, nice to end the episode on a high note, because this is a heavy topic.
Yeah.
I don't know. How are you feeling after going through all of it?
I feel like we went through a really intense 7 step process, but it feels good. It feels good. I feel purged and, like we really did some heavy thinking. Woo! Heavy thinking. I feel like we need to go have a little walk or a little stretch it out. Everyone needs to go have a little rehydrating, whatever they need to do to just move some good energy around.
It's so true. I think it's one of the gifts of hitting this stage of life that we are able to look at the light and the dark, the good and the bad in ourselves and in others, that we have the capacity to hold it all. And so I hope that this process on apologies sets you free and supports you. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye,
Mm.
girlfriends.
Bye. Thanks so much for the great, great advice today. Thank you for tuning in today to Girlfriends of a Certain Age podcast.
Do you have a girlfriend who needs to hear this message? Share this episode with her. She will love you forever.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and comment wherever you get your podcasts.
Stay tuned for more episodes where we discuss more hot topics about girlfriends living their best lives. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and girlfriendsofacertainage.com.